Hey guys, if you're married and you have a family, you need to stop acting single. There's a lot out there where I believe men, fathers, husbands, they are clinging on to the past in different ways of the single life. And I believe it's a huge catalyst for a lot of these divorces and separations and breakups that are so commonplace nowadays. Now, let me preface by saying this, that the most important foundation is having a righteous relationship with God because He sets the template. So I'll first and foremost say that. But as I go on here, I'm going to talk about things that if you're doing, meaning you're acting ways like a single person would, some things that you need to stop. First and foremost, being loose and sloppy with your time. That's something that can happen. It's not about you anymore. It's all about your family, the whole nucleus, your wife, your kids. You're going to have stuff planned. You and your wife, you're going to have date nights planned, or you should have date nights planned. Family trips, outings, vacations, your kids being involved in different activities, sports, and dance recitals, and school events, and all that type of stuff. So you don't have the luxury of being sloppy and random and happenstance with your time. That is, if you do care. You can still have leisure time and you can still have pursuits. I'm not saying that you should get rid of that stuff, but you just have to be more calculated and more precise with it. I'll give you an example. Something I like to do is exercise and work out. And in my younger days, when I didn't have any kids, I could just go to the gym, work out for 2.5 hours, hit every muscle group, kind of wing it, make it up as I go along, and have fun with it because I like to do that. But now, since my time is more finite, I still have plenty of time to work out. I just can't dilly dally in the gym, or even now I have my workout equipment in my home, which definitely saves a lot of time. But I have more measured and balanced workouts. So what was taking me before 2 hours because I was just messing around, now I can get done in 40 to 45 minutes. In a way, it's actually better because I value the time more, the workouts are more precise, and I'm not just gallivanting around. But that's just one example. There's other things that you do where you're gonna have to be more precise about your time. You're gonna have to sort of balance and measure it. So yeah, being loose and sloppy with your time is something that can continue. Another thing that you need to stop is trying to relate to your single and childless friends. It's a different world. You can get along with them. Of course, you can still be friendly with them, but you're not going to relate totally. So don't try to keep up with them. You might have single friends that can party a lot more, or drink a lot more, or just do a random eclectic activity at the snap of a finger just because they feel like doing it. You don't have that luxury. Something that I remind my single friends, if they want to do something, plan something, or invite me to something, I should say, you got to give me at minimum 48 hours notice, and even that's not a guarantee because I might have something on my calendar that's already planned for work, for my family, for whatever it might be. So you got to give me fair notice. And by the way, something I forgot to mention with the whole being loose and sloppy with your time thing, utilize your calendar. We got Google Calendar. You got calendar apps. I mean, use your device for something useful instead of just playing games and sending angry tweets. But keep your calendar up to date so you're not caught off guard when something does come up. Another thing that needs to stop is making sporadic decisions and not considering your family. That kind of goes along the line of trying to be relatable to your single friends that can just do whatever they want at any time, at any random thought, with no regard to anybody else except for maybe their place of work. And that's just not for a time management thing, but that's your finances as well. So random pipe dreams, they gotta stop. You can make calculated risk, but when I say calculated, is, for example, if you're thinking of making a major job change or a career change, you got to have a cushion in place that doesn't compromise your family. So you're thinking, oh, this job, I don't like it, it's not satisfying. Okay, and I understand career changes and all that, but you got to have another job in place. You have to have something in savings. I would say those at minimum, on top of being able to have a conversation with your wife and be like, hey, like I'm thinking about this, and is this feasible? And in other words, don't just go randomly off of something in your head and don't tell anybody else and then just make this drastic change in your family. Like, don't just randomly buy a boat and it's like, where did the money come from for this? Where are we going to store it? Like, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. So again, calculated risks, measured risks are one thing and they're fine. But don't test God out here. Random pipe dreams. You had aspirations of being an NFL player when you were younger. Now you're in your late 20s and you're thinking about making a comeback. You used to play some ball in college. So you just like get up, leave everything, and go to a tryout. Just slow down. Like, let's talk about this kind of stuff first. All right. Next thing, flirting with temptation. This is a big one. You got to be mindful of the home wreckers out there. So men, there are going to be women out there that are going to try to subtly and sometimes not so subtle try to get your attention and your attraction to get closer to you. And they're not thinking about the long-term well-being of your family, especially in this very sexually immoral culture, the sexually loose, fluid culture that pays little regard to the family structure. There's loose women out there, and you have to be careful to not get caught in temptation. I would say flee from temptation like the Bible says. Because here's how it goes. If you're married, obviously that means you're attracted. In fact, you're so attractive that somebody wanted to marry you. There you go. And chances are you're stable, you have a good job, you're making good money, you got a good head on your shoulders. That's going to be attractive to women. Not just your wife, who's your main source of attraction, but it's going to be attractive to other women that are single and having trouble finding a man, or women that are maybe in a relationship or married, but then they see you and they see that you got things together and they want a piece of that. Or if you just happen to be a handsome, good looking, good personality guy, like you're going to draw some attraction just from that. But you have to resist it. First and foremost, you have to love your wife. Stick with your wife. Don't fall for any of that grass is greener sort of rhetoric. There's a lot of imagery out there in the media and whatnot that, if you have more girls, more women, more attention, more sex, that everything is just going to be all right in your life. And that's simply not true. Those extremes are really not ideal. And really, another thing that happens is you get so caught up in what else is going on that you don't think of the cons, the ramifications, the potential of ruining your family and creating distrust between your wife and your kids, and the financial losses, and potentially if you go through a divorce and lose your job and lose your reputation. All these things that we don't think of because we have these fleeting moments of lust when temptation comes along. So you can't flirt with temptation in general, but you can't be out here flirting with other women. Doesn't mean that you can't be polite, you can't be cordial, you can't have a conversation with a woman. That's totally fine, but really pay attention with this stuff. I can think, and my mind is going through it right now, of times where I can think of in just out in society, in the workplace, etc., where women, if I think about it, they were probably either flirting with me or trying to get close with me, but I was completely oblivious with it because I love my beautiful, wonderful wife so much that I didn't realize it was going on until after the fact. when the woman started acting cold and callous and stopped doing favors for me and stopped being so polite. And I think to myself, like what got up her butt? And then you look back in hindsight and realize, oh, she thought maybe she had a chance, whether she was conscious of it or not. And when I wasn't reciprocating the signals and the body language and the flirtations, then it turned very cold. I've seen it numerous times in my life in hindsight, but you just got to keep moving on. You can't fall under temptation. Another thing you need to stop is taking unwarranted marriage and parenting advice from people that don't know your experiences or really aren't involved or oriented towards the family anyway. You really want to avoid or be careful of random advice from single people that don't know what you're going through, people that own pets, own dogs, and talk to them, treat them like people. I got a whole nother video about that coming out one day, where people will talk to their dog and, oh, that's my daughter, that's my son. No, it's a dog, it's an animal. We have dominion over the animals. Didn't y'all read Genesis? We have dominion over these creatures. Stop treating them like other human beings. That's a whole thing in itself. But I've had that before, where people will try to give me parenting advice based on how they treat their dog or their cat, which is just insulting in so many ways. So don't listen to those people. And really just don't listen to people, groups in general, that just don't value the nuclear family by their ideals, by their talk, by their rhetoric, by their actions. You don't want to take parental marriage advice from, guys on that whole, red pill stuff, like women are, evil and terrible, or you don't want to take advice from, I've talked in a couple videos about, extreme feminists that, we don't need men and, screw men, their patriarchy's terrible. Like, you don't want to take family advice from them. Obviously people that aren't worried about, family or children in general, abortionists, you don't want to be taking marital and family advice from somebody that doesn't have value of life from the get-go. Those are just a few examples. But yeah, don't take unwarranted marriage and parenting advice from people that probably don't know what they're talking about. You want to take, if you do take marital advice, somebody who's biblically sound, biblically based, that actually has structures, some things that you can build off of. But even so, you want to take everything with a grain of salt. Don't just take random advice from random strangers about everything. And then finally, the last thing I have that you need to stop doing, if you're a family man, is to stop over glorifying your single days. That time is gone. Your prime is past. It's over, man. You can look back in memories and maybe pull from some mistakes that you made and use them relevant to your life now. You can maybe just look back and think to yourself like, I wonder what happened to that person or to that situation. Just for the heck of it. But don't glorify it. Don't sit there and try to beg and plead for the old days. That's what leads to midlife crises. That's what leads to people doing just weird and crazy and shocking things. You got to move on. Okay. Enjoy what you have. A beautiful wife, children, however many children that you have, all that you've established, all that God has blessed you with, your home, finances, whatever your situation, perfect or not, and it's likely going to be imperfect, but it's a blessing. Sometimes we have this thing where we look at the old days and we forget about all the tough times and all the negatives and struggles we went through, and then we get short-sighted. If you look in the Bible, if you look at the Exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, once they were in the wilderness for a while, a lot of them started wishing they were back in Egypt. Man, we weren't eating this manna in Egypt. We had good food and like everything was awesome and we could have our fill. So they forgot about all the slavery and the whips and stuff. And they started thinking about the good old days. The good old days back when they were slaves in Egypt. And that's what'll happen. That goes into that whole grass is greener sort of aspect. You got to let those days go. Okay, you don't want to be a subject of, that Bruce Springsteen song Glory Days. You don't want to be that person that's just sitting at a bar drinking and reminiscing about what should have been, what could have been. So you got to move on. But yeah, that's really the main theme of this video, is moving on from the single life. You're in a better position based on your choice. You've gotten married, and I know we use the term settle down, but you're not necessarily settling down in terms of giving up or not striving for anything. Life actually gets better from here. And I fully advocate for that. But you got to stop staying single. You got to stop looking in the rearview mirror and start focusing on what's in front of you in the windshield. You notice there's a reason why your rearview mirror is so tiny and your windshield is so big, because where you're at and where you're going, focusing on the present, is so much bigger and more important than the stuff that happened in the past. It's a physical manifestation or metaphor for the way life should be. Take very little insight from the past, just enough to not make any more mistakes, and then look forward, focus on your present, and have an engaging future with your family, with your wife. So that's all I got for you guys today. Have a blessed day. Peace.